Hello everyone, I'm Petr Sochůrek. I'm here with Nathan Steuer, the GOAT. How it's going?
Hey, it's going good. Thanks for taking the time to have me on your channel.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, like 2 years ago I interviewed many people, I think like 70 people that are famous in Magic or whatever. Eventually I kinda ran out of people to interview, so I stopped. There were like other reasons as well, but that was the main reason. But a lot of things have changed in the last 2 years. Nathan kind of won everything. I think literally everything that you can think of. So, so he was the first person that came to my mind, and he agreed to talk to me today. So I'm really happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I was like, well, what is Petr going to do about his show if I don't do well in events? And so it really motivated me to succeed. And I'm glad that I got the call.
All right, so I guess what I always did was that before I talk about Magic, I just ask about ask the person what he's doing outside of Magic and stuff like that. When I asked you on Facebook what you're doing, you said that you're like doing some kind of work that's also Magic related. Can you maybe talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually working at a company called Manapool right now, which is a startup in the Magic market space. And what they're doing is essentially they're trying to create a US market similar to card market in Europe and trying to compete with TCG, but their niche is that they're only focusing on Magic, and I'm spending a lot of time doing a variety of skills, like administrative skills for them, managing things like payroll, support emails, hiring people for different positions, sort of the classic like startup, have a lot of small things that have to be done and need someone who's able to be flexible and do a lot of different roles depending on what the company needs. And so that's been a fun thing to do on top of normally doing coaching and also competing.
Cool. What is the advantage of doing just Magic? You mentioned other TCGs as well, but you're focusing only on Magic. Is there any particular reason for that?
I think a big part of it is just for our company focusing only on Magic means that you get more specialization. And so if you want to appeal to EDH or other people who just want to play like the specific types of Magic, you can create features that recommend for that thing, as opposed to if you're trying to incorporate all of the different card games, it means that you have to make more broad features. I mean, for lack of a better term, like any specialization and focus allows you to have more of a niche in terms of your design space. And so now that you're only selling Magic cards, well, the site is set up in such a way where you're only focusing on what you need to appeal to specifically Magic players. So that's a big part of it. Even in like the content in the YouTube and the articles, that's your target audience.
That makes sense. The reason why I was asking that is that the other thing that you mentioned when I asked you on Facebook was Lorcana. For people who don't know, that's like the new card game from Disney, if I'm not mistaken. So I was just curious that maybe you're also involved in doing something with that, but that's not the case, or?
I've been competing a bit in Lorcana. I played in like a 16-player invitational this past weekend, and I really enjoyed like the actual gameplay of it being such that you're always playing a game. The Mulligan rule is like an extreme version of the London Mulligan, where you draw 7 cards and you could, like Hearthstone, put back as many cards as you want and draw that many cards. But also you have the upside of you play your cards as lands or spells, and so you get to craft a hand similar to how you would in Magic.
Yeah, I actually saw some photo on Twitter where you were playing against Frank Karsten. I guess that was the invitational.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me because I see so many people talking about Lorcana, but like I was kind of assuming that it's really hard to make like a TCG that people would be interested in. Usually, there were many attempts and it almost always failed. Do you think that there is like anything specific about it, or is it just because it's from Disney, or like is the game really good? Can you talk about it a little bit?
I think the land system, being how it is called ink in this game, means that you're playing basically every game, and like the better players get to win so much higher % of the time that like as a competitive player, it's such a big advantage to be able to play the game. And I found it really fun being like when I'm playing against other high level players, like playing against Frank. It's very competitive, and every decision is like predicting their best play like 2 or 3 turns down the line. Plus, you just get to access a lot of your deck in this game, and so I found that particular aspect to be very appealing as like a competitive player who has to do similar things in Magic but doesn't quite get to see the same quantities. I think it's a good game, but I think that only being one set means there's not that much design space, and so they have to keep improving their products in the next year if they want to make it a long-standing competitive game.
When you said that you can kind of use your cards as lands, depending on the situation or whatever, that actually has been like I didn't really play that many other TCGs, but it actually been my experience that that's usually the case, and that's why Magic is so appealing that it has these lands that you sometimes get mana screwed or mana flooded, and the worst player can actually win, which funnily enough makes the game more appealing because even the bad player can win sometimes. So like, do you think that it being like more competitive or like the better player always win is actually like a good thing? You know what I mean,
That's
right?
a good question. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think that it is appealing to me specifically, but I can see why a broader audience would be less interested in the game as a result of it. I mean, when I'm playing a tournament, my goal is like, how can I maximize my edges in game? And when the game engine allows me to do so just naturally, it does feel more fulfilling. It's like, okay, my opponent made a mistake by playing the wrong card as a land on turn 3 or turn 5, and that was the difference in the game. And to some, that might be like, I don't want to play a game where that's the case, but to me, I just feel like this is very fun and enjoyable, and I have to think really hard on every land that I play versus in Magic, you play a fetch land versus another fetch land, and it's all the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Right, before we get into the actual Magic itself, another thing that caught my interest was that you mentioned writing/journaling. Are you actually like writing articles for some paper that's like not Magic related, or?
I do a lot of personal writing, and I enjoy basically just reading and writing down thoughts and just sort of keeping like a living page of different ideas I have outside of Magic mostly. I mean, I found it really fun to get back into reading after like maybe 10 years where I wasn't regularly reading books, and last year was like a time where I just got inspired to get more involved with basically reading like a variety of different categories and keeping up with news. And so yeah, that was something that I feel like has really shifted my perspective on the world over like the last year, and it's a fun activity to do that's not necessarily just playing Magic all the time.
But you do play a lot of Magic. Another thing that you mentioned was that you dropped out of college, and the year that you did that, you actually won the World Championship. Do you think it was actually there was like actual correlation? Was it like kind of because of that because you went super hard, or can you maybe like talk about that decision a little bit?
The biggest thing was when I dropped out, I didn't have to split my attention because realistically before that it was like, I'm in school, but I don't really want to be in school, and so I'm spending my time practicing Magic and also doing classes that I don't care about. And once I got rid of those classes that I felt like were just stressful and made me less motivated to play Magic, it meant that I could just fully devote myself to practicing, and it definitely like was the main reason that I won. Like I think if I were still in school, there was no way I would have won Worlds.
Mm-hmm. Had it some kind of an impact that there was like Corona, and maybe the situation about Magic was kind of weird, and maybe not that many people were trying as much at that time. So maybe if you go really hard, you can kind of get ahead of the competition. Do you think that maybe that kind of influenced your decision, or would you just do it regardless?
I think for me, just seeing that I was close enough to getting to Worlds, if I had good results at the online events, meant that it wasn't really a question. At a certain point, it was like, if I do well in like 2 events or middling, like I'll qualify for this event that I've always wanted to qualify for, and like I don't know when I'll get another opportunity to do so. Therefore, it was like, I'm going to push as hard as I can. And what you're saying about Corona and like the way that factored into the top levels is important, where it's like the best players in the world before COVID might have been players who, grinded a ton of events and traveled and went. But after the shift to online play, it was actually the people that were consistently playing the online tournaments and doing well. And so it created more opportunity for people that couldn't necessarily travel all the time to be some of the best and improve at a pretty quick rate.
Yeah, for people who don't know, like you know, I think everyone knows that you won the Pro Tour and like won the World Championship and topped another Pro Tour, but you actually won like 2 Moxes in a row before that, and even like that already was like super crazy. Um, People were even like comparing you to like maybe Kai Bude, John Finkel, stuff like that. I know that people probably ask you this a lot, but do you think that you know that's legit, or did you got super lucky, or do you think that maybe because of the new system people aren't really trying that hard, so it's like a little bit easier, like you don't have these Pablo Vitor, Damo de Rosas in the tournament and stuff like that. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think a big thing is when I'm getting ready for the tournaments, I feel that having a really strong team behind me compared to like most other teams in the game is like a big difference. And right now there aren't as many dominating forces of teams as like we've seen in like years past. And so I just feel like when I start a tournament, like deck alone, if everyone was on even playing field, I would still have a pretty good advantage going into most tournaments. And I think my deck selection's been quite good in the past year. In Modern Magic, that's like a huge factor in how much you win. And that kind of shows in me winning Worlds as like the only Grixis player in the field, where I believe I just had a huge edge because of deck selection. And then winning the Pro Tour Marching Machines with Black-Red Midrange, where I think we just found a way to get a huge edge in a lot of the mirror matches. And that mattered a lot for that success. But in terms of where I see myself, I think my biggest strength is my ability to like hand read and figure out what someone's doing with pretty little information. And my in-game like technical play is very high. And so that's just came through a lot of training, and honestly, I think coaching other players has made me a better player in that regard, which I've been doing as a job for like 2 years to fully support myself before this other opportunity that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. Maybe that many people don't really know about it. So how does coaching work? People can just kind of like maybe email you and get a session, and you just get paid for that, or how does it work?
I have a Metafy link, which is like a coaching website that people can book through, and I also have like a personal booking link that someone can find if they message me or otherwise. But the general idea behind it is I try to take in players and see if first like they're a good fit for me, because I'm not really trying to get as many clients as possible. Like I just want to make sure the clients that I get can actually get value out of talking with me, and I can offer them something that they can like learn long term. And so a lot of what a session looks like is first I start with like assessing their actual abilities and asking them hard questions and trying to figure out like where are they at. And you know, they'll tell you something, but the truth is you sort of have to watch them and question their motivations and decision making before you can really figure it out. And after that, it becomes creating a plan for a specific person and figuring out what they need to do to improve in a specific direction. And so my general approach is like I lean into like, you could say like a skill track. What sort of skills does someone need to succeed? Like I'm like, okay, if you're going to succeed, like you personally need to start by understanding every deck in the metagame, and this is like a memorization game at this point for you. So before I can like help you at this point, you need to learn all the decks in Modern, and I'm going to quiz you on those decks. And like that might not be what you want. You might just want to jam a ton of games, but like until you get this deck knowledge, I can't teach you much more that's valuable. And so it's just identifying like a discipline of what do they want to do? Well, they want to just play games and get better. And I'm trying to be like, well, you have to do that with intentionality and understand what actually goes into getting better as a player. Might just be learning why your opponent's making their turn on play and figuring out, you know, what is their best possible play in the next turn. And so a lot of it is learning through repetition and getting them to understand, like, what do you need to know in this spot and how can you apply that to all future similar spots. And so I try to teach in like, here's a concept, here's how you can practice this concept, here's one way that you might be missing this concept, and then give them an assignment, and they come back to me and they're like, okay, I learned a little bit this week, and then we go somewhere else and we realize, oh wait, they have to shore up that other skill. So it's kind of just jumping all over the place.
So you basically have only like couple clients and you go like really hard with them, right?
I would say, probably 15 to 20 clients, so a decent amount at this point.
So if someone wanted to apply, they can still apply, but depending on the situation, you might not be able to coach them.
Right. I mean, I will give everyone like an introduction and make sure that goes well and try to help, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be beneficial for both of us long term.
I see. So we kind of talked about recent results, but we didn't actually talk about like your beginnings or your past. You're super young, you're 21, but maybe people don't know this, but you were kind of around forever. Like I remember even when I was considered super young, like you were already there. How did your journey started? You kind of told me privately that you first saw magic in like a magic camp or something like that.
Just like a general summer camp
Yeah.
where you can do just like a ton of activities, but I learned from a camp counselor and decided I wanted to go to a game store and get packs. And then after going there once, I was like, oh wait, I want to go every week and do draft. And so I learned by playing draft every week and eventually got to a point where, oh wait, I wanted to get a standard deck, so I'd get a standard deck for a season and then play that deck until I couldn't anymore. And over time, I sort of always had a competitive drive, and so I pushed to go to GPs and other events, and every weekend I would travel with a group of friends to different tournaments, whatever, like the local PTQ, RCQ, whatever it was. And so that's sort of where I was at for about 5 or 6 years. And then a big transition happened when I graduated high school, and this was right at the beginning of COVID. Before that, I had qualified for 2 PTs, I believe. And so I had played in the team PT, 25th anniversary. That was my first PT with 2 of my best friends. And then I played in Pro Tour Richmond, aka Pro Tour Oko, and I re-queued off of my first individual PT, and I've been on the train ever since.
Did it just kind of randomly happen because you just kind of liked it and you were competitive, or were you like attempting to become a pro since the beginning?
I always wanted to be a pro player, I think. Like, it wasn't really a question for me. I've just always been like, I'm dedicated to what I do. I'm going to put in as many hours as I can. And yeah, I think it was always just like, this is a dream of mine. I always watch as much coverage as possible. So, yeah.
This is going to be kind of a weird question, but like for example, for myself, my parents weren't really supportive of like me trying to go for being a pro or whatever. And I know that being American must be even harder because you just need more money to survive. So being like a full-time Magic player is even harder in your country. Did you had like a support from family, or was that not the case at all?
No,
Okay.
not really. I mean, I just had to figure out like, okay, if I do well in this Magic tournament, then I can pay for like food and travel for events. And one funny story is when I was 15 or so, I lied to my parents and I told them that I was going to hang out with friends in like the local area for a tournament and staying overnight with friends. And then I flew to Detroit for a Grand Prix, so I flew across the country from California because my parents said that I couldn't go. And I paid for a flight. It was a team GP, and I went with friends. And it didn't go so well, but it was one of those things of like, well, I'm just kind of.
Did they find out about it?
Oh, they found out right before I got on the flight.
How did they find out? Like, did you just tell them or?
It was a Friday, and I had skipped school, and I just got a call from the school, so it wasn't the most well thought out plan. I thought that they wouldn't get a call immediately, but it was like within an hour of me being at the airport.
Wow. What do they think about it now? Like you won kind of everything. Did you change their mind about it?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't anti-Magic, but they were sort of like, school is the big priority.
Yeah.
We're not going to pay to support you. Like, you have to figure it out. And I was like, okay, like, I'll just do what I want to do. And I want to play Magic as much as I can. So I just sort of did and got fortunate enough to be able to win in the tournaments that I played and pay for most of the things I needed for travel. But yeah, my parents now are like obviously big supporters of my career in it and think that it was ultimately a good decision, but hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. The situation now is kind of weird. Like even if you're winning everything, if you just like do badly at a pro tour, you don't really qualify for anything anymore. Aren't you afraid about that? Maybe.
So I'm qualified for the first two PTs of this year, and my current feelings about it are it's impossible to stay on forever. You're just going to have like natural variance that takes you off for some period of time. But luckily, I have a career in Magic that's built in like a job and other things now. And so if I didn't qualify, I would probably just, play in the regionals, try to qualify and not worry so much about it, since now my main income and livelihood isn't from competing and doing well in tournaments, which is a pretty big upside.
All right, that makes sense. That's gonna be it for today. Thanks for your time. It was awesome talking to you. And good luck in the future tournaments and with everything that you do.
Thanks, Petr. Appreciate it.
Bye.